Good morning, everyone. I think that we can start.
Morning.
Good morning, Filippo. Good morning, all.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Filippo Cavaliere, PhD student at Politecnico di Milano, and I have the pleasure to welcome you and to introduce you to the webinar Managing Social Innovation from Past Challenges to Future Opportunities. I'm going to spend just a few words to speak to you about the context, to explain you the context of the webinar, and then we start. This is the first one in a series of webinars coordinated by Politecnico di Milano and the University of Bologna with the support of City of Torino. Starting today and ending in April with a frequency of about one webinar a month. This series is aimed to explore the different aspects of social innovation. The series is part of the project SEED. That is one of 6 projects supported by the European Commission to establish national competence centers for promoting social innovation across the European Union. You can find all the information about the project in general and the series with the timetable and the informations about all the events on the website of SEED that I'm going to leave you on the chat. Today we are going to review and to analyze the main challenges of social innovation, the challenges of the past, present, and future. We'll do it with an introduction of Mario Calderini, Professor Mario Calderini, full professor at Politecnico di Milano and director of Tiresia, the Research Center for Impact, Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Finance of the School of Management of the Politecnico di Milano, and with a panel moderated by Andrea Giuliano, PhD student at Politecnico di Milano, featuring as speakers Elisa Bacchetti and Chiara Bortini for SocialFare, Marco Nannini for ImpactHub, and Federico Mento for Ashoka. At the end of the panel, we will have time and space for your questions, considerations about the topic that most interested and impressed you. In the next days, you will receive a survey for your feedback and considerations about this webinar that is very important for us. We don't have a lot of time, so thanks again for being here, and I leave the floor to Professor Mario Calderini, who will introduce us to the topic of today. Mario, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Filippo, and welcome everybody. It's a very great pleasure to share a few thoughts with you and introduce the seminar. I think I'll take a sort of critical position and see if we can discuss together what I consider the missed promises of social innovation from the standpoint of someone that is very fond of social innovation and genuinely believes that social innovation includes all the DNA that we need to define a better sustainable development path. But in order to leverage on this DNA and to exploit models, I think we need a critical reflection of what went wrong and also what was the positive contribution of very many social innovation models all around the place. I think my point of view is that we need to come to terms with the fact that many social innovation models, very many social innovation models, never scale up and never got to a structural dimension of systemic change. Not every model, but many of them. A bit more successful was the aspect of social innovation as a positive agent of contamination of entrepreneurship. I think that social innovation has been a sort of external demonstrator and external stimulus to mainstream innovation to create new solutions. But the hypothesis that many of us shared in the previous years, that was social innovation model can scale up and structure and become systemic solution, I left us with some disappointment, at least myself with some disappointment. There are reasons that we can discuss, but I think we should concentrate on two main different archetypes of failure. We have a lot of so-called minor social innovation models that simply never scale up. They provided very good local, small solutions. When I say small, I'm not saying that they are not relevant or brilliant in innovative terms, but that never provided a scale of solution that was apt to the expectations and the needs that we all have in front of the huge societal challenges that lay ahead. So on the one side, simply they did not scale. On the other side, we have another set of situation or set of solution that did actually scale, but while scaling up, they just lost their founding nature of genuinely social innovation features. If we think about, for example, all the different models that we could include in the peer-to-peer solution. Take Airbnb, take Uber, and I would include also many car-sharing business models. During the scaling process, very soon, very rapidly, these models, they lost all the genuine social innovation features that would have provided a positive impact with those solutions. And the question we need to ask ourselves is why, what went wrong, what we got wrong in defining governance models that during the scale-up process would preserve the integrity and the quintessential nature of social innovation in this kind of scaled up models. So for example, they entirely lost their peer-to-peer nature to become very hierarchical. They become very weird in terms of distributive terms, in distributive properties, with a lot of inequalities in the distribution of, for example, of rents between the top managers and the workers, and many other failures that you all know, and I don't need to waste your time to list. So on the one side, we haven't been able to scale up and to offer structural solution. Second, when it's scaled up, the governance model that we had in mind and we applied to social innovation were not strong enough to preserve the quintessential nature of social innovation. Third, sometimes social innovation was successful, and this is the positive side of the story, looking at maybe 30 years history, was very successful in stimulating from outside mainstream innovation. In this respect, I think that we can be happy and say, well done. Now, why? What went wrong? There are very many explanations. Why? One is that, for example, in terms of governance model, social innovation has been very self-referential. Social innovators have been over radical in defining their business models, and there has been some kind of narcissist pleasure of social innovation in keeping solution very niche and very local and very under-ambitious. And I think this is something that the social innovation community cannot afford any longer. Times are too hard, societal challenges are too tough to be happy and please ourselves with minor, small, and purely aesthetic social innovation solutions. And I think it's the time to play the tough game. And as they say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And it's time for social innovation to let themselves be challenged by structural challenges and not only local and small challenges. And I think this is the big thing ahead. One aspect of this story is, of course, one good solution, I think, is in a new definition of social entrepreneurship. I'm very blunt on that. I think that there is one major hurdle that is psychological and also formal hurdle, that is the existence of such a thing called third sector. And the third sector has been this sort of psychological boundary that has kept, for example, different forms of social entrepreneurship a bit segregated by the big game of for-profit organization. In a moment, and I think most of us, certainly myself, underplayed one major problem that the profit sector was going to play in our playing field, in the social innovation playing field, sometimes genuinely, sometimes in a very opportunistic way, sometimes in a very dangerous way. But as a matter of fact, they started playing in our playing field, in the social innovation playing field. And I think our big mistake has been to neglect this and think that there was this wall that was represented by the psychological boundary of the third sector definition, and the third sector was a sort of separation wall that would keep us or the social innovators away from competition, both in terms of value and in terms of market competition from the profit sector, and is not turned out to be a right assumption. We found ourselves, social innovation found itself competing with different solutions that the capitalistic system and the mainstream for-profit organization presented. And of course, they were larger, tougher, more structured, and the competition is unfair if we do not define a precise value-based identity of social innovation model. But value identity is not enough. Social innovation has to offer systemic and structural solution. Otherwise, it's condemning itself to irrelevance. And I don't want it to happen. And I say in this, if we are able to overcome, if we are confident enough in the structure of values of social innovators, so that we don't need the protection of the third sector definition as a boundary, as a wall, we can play a better game, for example, in social entrepreneurship, and we can play the social entrepreneurship game in a very open and brave way. That means, for example, embracing technological innovation. That means, for example, embracing managerial structuration and managerial competencies. That means, for example, defining a healthy but open and brave relationship with financial markets. And I do think that is what's lay ahead in the next future. it's clear that, for example, the pandemics taught us an important lesson, and that is that the so-called third sector, and in particular the entrepreneurial part of the third sector, has delayed the adoption of technology and the adoption of financial and managerial models too long, and at the end of the day, it presented itself as small and fragile. And it is not good news for social innovation, because we are going to waste all the wonderful things that are in social innovation. We have not, the social innovation realm has not been particularly helped by the policymakers. And if the third sector in all its forms has been a bit slow in understanding the competition coming outside from the profit, the opportunities laying in technology, and let's say the third sector was a bit timid in the representation of itself as a main player of development models, even worse were the policymakers that still today have a image and representation of the third sector that more or less dates back 40 years ago. And of course, it's not very helpful. And when the policies are defined, what's their idea and representation of social innovation is always the small thing, the redistributive thing that is there and not particularly scalable and usable on a structural dimension. As a last comment, I do think that the most clear evidence and representation of the problems that I try to offer in this very critical thinking that is a sort of love message for social innovation, of course, is all the realm of the place-based policies and place-based development models. In place-based policies, for example, in structural funds, for example, in cohesion policies, we desperately need social innovation and social entrepreneurship. And we desperately need social innovation and social entrepreneurship to grow. And we need, because at the end of the day, today, 2022, what's happening is that we have a lacerated and detached set of policies, if you think, in place-based policies. Because on the one side, you have this sort of rhetoric and meaningless Silicon Valley narrative through which local developments and place-based policies should be more or less implemented as a bad copy of the Silicon Valley model. And so you have Science Park, you have all this tech thing and all this science-based development where the idea is that this high-tech startup would create so much value that it will spill over on communities and society, and it will be so abundant that we won't have any kind of redistributive problem. And it didn't work. We have the work of Rodriguez Pose, we have the work of Joan Rosés, we have many empirical evidence now that the Silicon Valley model of place-based development has created a lot of inequality on a geographical scale in Europe. But then, what is the alternative that was offered by social innovation? Known because social innovation offered small, never scaled solutions, never systemic. And my point is, we need to stop to celebrate the Silicon Valley narrative, of course, but also we need to be critical and stop celebrate the small, minor social innovation solutions. Because now the game is tough. And my question to all of you is, well, is it possible that there is no third way? Are we condemned to live in this dichotomy between the social innovation of a very small group of 2 innovators bringing food to old people, elderly people during the pandemic, and on the other side, fake high-tech startups creating wonderful models of development. There must be a third way. There must be a way by which social innovation scales, taking a good part of the technological narrative and discourse coming from the Silicon Valley and declines it into a more appropriate and cohesive and inclusive model for Europe. So if I have to name one big challenge in place-based policies is exactly this one. Let's find a third way where social innovation is bringing its DNA, but is open and brave in embracing the challenges and also the model, the references that are coming from traditional high-tech models. This is the third way we should work on because I think we have a bit overindulgent on the properties of social innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mario Calderini again, full professor at Politecnico di Milano and director of Theresia, the same institution. Now it's time to really start from there. So our idea was to have this introduction by Professor Calderini to then open a panel for discussion with experts in the field of social innovation and social impact, and have more of a dialogue with them in trying to start from there, from the challenges we just explained, from the from a major theme there that is scaling, that has been opened up by Professor Calderini. So I would say let's invite them on stage. We don't have a stage, so let's invite them to open their camera. So we've got here already, I see Federico Mento from Ashoka Italia. He's the director of Ashoka Italia. We've got Elisa Bacchetti, Deputy Operations Officer, and Chiara Burtini, Social Economy Business Expert, both at SocialFare. And we also have Marco Nannini, CEO at ImpactHub. I don't see Marco Nannini yet, but we'll see if he connects soon. So thank you very much for being here. Just a few technical disclaimers. After the panel discussion, we will open a Q&A session for the participants to actively take part in. So I would say, I believe, Filippo, they've got access to the chat. If they do, I would say let's pop the questions in the chat even throughout the panel discussion so we can read them out at the end after we finish the discussion with the participants. Okay, so that was a very intense first comment. So I would really take it from there, and I would invite the speakers to present themselves in the first place. And I would start with the same question there. So what are the main challenges you think in managing social innovation processes and initiatives? Do you agree with Professor Calderini? Do you want to add any more insights on there? Maybe we'll start from Federico Mento. Federico, if you're ready. I cannot hear. I don't know if it's my problem. Filippo?
No, we can hear you, but we can't hear the guest.
Okay. Federico, I think we've got a problem with your microphone.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if Chiara Burtini and Elisa Bacchetti want to start while Federico fixes the issue with the microphone. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we can go. Okay, so I first introduce myself. I'm Elisa Bacchetti from SocialFare, Center for Social Innovation here in Turin. And I'm with my colleague Chiara Bortini, economy expert in the same enterprise. So thanks, first of all, for inviting us here. It was a really interesting comment, the one made from Professor Mario Calderini, and I think we can agree on what he said, of course. The fact is that social innovation now is from several years it is in place, so we experiment a lot. And also other people of course before us and in parallel with us. So of course I think as well we need to find new ways to deal with what is happening now, and especially if our solutions are not efficient, we of course need to rethink about them, and to rethink about them both in terms of governance, maybe about tools, maybe in terms of collaborations and partners and actors which are involved in this kind of definition of solutions and so on. So first of all, I want to say this first comment. I don't know if Chiara wants to introduce herself, then I don't know if we move to Federico or we go on with our ideas of challenges about social innovation.
Yes, Chiara, if you want to go on, then we can open up the discussion on that.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chiara Bortini and I work as SocialFare as a social economy and business expert. For true, I think that Elisa said everything what I wanted to say. So I think that maybe Federico can go and maybe I just reply later.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean the old trick of switch off and switch on is always winner the winning trick. So I'm Federico Mento and I'm the director of Ashoka Italy. It's really a pleasure to be with you. And listening to Mario issues, I think that it really has touched the right points in terms of challenging for social innovation organization, in terms of the approach they have. So sometimes they are very focused on local issue, and they are very good in answering to emerging and urgent social need. But I think that a missing piece for those organizations is really what in Ashoka we call the systemic approach. So there is a culture that is still driven by needs, and I think that the big challenge is to change this culture and try to driven this organization by changing the system. So I think that changing the system is really the big challenge they have. And we should try, the way to support this organization for embracing this view of systemic change, and also try to support them with a new set of skills that are crucial for scaling up, for changing their approach, for changing their culture, and also for changing the leadership. That I think it's another big issue. And I completely agree with Mario when he said that we should not copy the experience of tech startups, but the life cycle of social innovation organization is quite different. So I think that we should figure out a really different approach for supporting this organization and scale up this organization.
Thank you very much, Federico. Before we move on to listen to Elisa and Chiara, so Ashoka has this approach of system change. So system change would include, but then you can explain it to us, of course, would include a lot of different elements that we need to change within the societal realm in order to scale-up projects. So we would include institutional access, we would include market access, for example, the mindset shift. How do you really implement these? So how do you find the middle ground that Mario Calderini was talking about before, between the hyper-local solution and, on the other side, the hyper-functional scientific technological solution put in place in the Silicon Valley model? How do you find that middle ground?
Well, I think that the answer is our selection process. So in Ashoka, we developed in the last 40 years a very selective approach that help us to understand if an organization has really the capacity of working on systemic dimension instead of, being a wonderful, sustainable, but very, very local organization. So our selection process we call venture process is a very sound approach for identifying those organizations and those leaders. And we basically have defined some criterias. And also we have, several interviews, different levels of interviews between our staff, our big community, and the potential fellow to understand if really he or she has this potential systemic approach. So I think that the process we have put in place for the selection is the answer for, really find the good alignment between the systemic view and the work of our fellows. So if you look to our fellow, most of them are not from a legal perspective, social entrepreneurs. They are system changers. So I prefer, instead of using social entrepreneurs, to use system changers because they really work on fix the big issue that are part of the system. And their approach is an approach for changing the system and sometimes producing a frame change that it's basically a mindset shift in society. Like, Jimmy Wales of Wikipedia, that it's, for me, the most transformative initiative related to access to culture from, the invention of Gutenberg and printing. So I think that this is the type of organization we should find and we should support for really producing this big shift.
Great. Thank you very much, Federico. So yeah, that is definitely an approach. Of course, Ashoka is a very structured organization that supports social entrepreneurs, but supports system changers. And the process, the selection process there is definitely an answer coming from actual experts. So I'll move on to Elisa and Chiara. So I would just take a step back onto the challenges. So if you want to provide even maybe a brief comment on the comment that provided Professor Calderini, and then what do you actually feel are the challenges in managing social innovation just now as social innovation experts and also as practitioners within SocialFare?
Okay, so it will be me, I will go for this question, and Chiara will go for the next. So I just try to connect with what Federico said about systemic change. Of course, we agree with the fact that we have them, we need these people that have this kind of intention of make social innovation and are trying already to make it. What we found challenging in this sense is sometimes the fact of a culture of social innovation, as was mentioned. For example, both about knowledge and know-how related to the social innovation. That is a factor and a matter of since social innovation is dealing with the wicked problem, so very complex problem, very challenging problems and so on, that are not just related to one specific need, but several times just one need is just the first one of several other needs that are just behind. So So we need to be able to work with complexity. So we need to work with complexity to define and to arrive to systemic changes and so systemic solutions. So for these, we really need an alignment of the language that we have, on the tools that we use, on the process that we want to follow. So several times we think that this is one of the challenges that we have to face, especially because like to find, to define and to set up social innovation solutions, we need to collaborate. We cannot do it by ourselves, but we need to be accessible, both in terms of understanding what we want to propose, both to involve people, to involve institutions, to involve companies. So we really need a culture, a shared culture of social innovation and what is related to it. So about the terms, about the language that we have, the tools and everything related to it. So I think this is really like something really practical, not so much maybe inspiring, but I think it's really something like practical that we need. And even if it seems like strange that we are not still reaching it, but several times we find that it's like that. So that a common language is not already in place, a common culture is not every time there. So every time there is this kind of effort, every time we start a project, we start a communication with someone who is new from the field, we need to have this alignment. That of course is kind of also like a positive thing, because of course require an effort to be made. But of course it's also like a first way to create a first relation with the others that are on the floor. So I think it's also like a positive thing.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Yeah, I think sometimes more pragmatism and practicalities are just as inspiring as big talks. So that's absolutely a really good point. Chiara, if you want to add something.
Yeah, so I think Elisa really reached the point like all the others. So I think the biggest changes that we have is about shared culture, because I mean, we are like lots of people that works together for the same point, but we all have different backgrounds. So sometimes it's kind of hard to find a common area and common ideas, but I think it's very important to work on there to build a very social common languages that we all spoke.
Oh, sorry. Who do you think can do that? So who's in charge? Who should be in charge of building that common language? Should it be more around innovators themselves that should make themselves heard and understood to others? Should it be organizations coming from the profit sector, non-profit sector, third sector, social sector, whatever? Should it be policymakers, the institutions? So where should the push come from there, in your opinion?
So I think that everyone that you said must like work on that, because I mean, it's like a common work. You can't do it just by your own, but I think, so if I must decide, I will say that all the social innovation partners, but also like the public administration that we work on is, is like inserting this cultural idea. So we must work together in a more completely way.
Yeah, if I can just add, I agree with Chiara for the fact that about like, for example, like institutions, maybe, I don't know if are they that can propose or like define which are like the new language or something, but for sure they can diffuse it. So what, I mean, I agree in the sense that public institutions need to be on this, and especially to help to diffuse this. So everyone needs to be aware of what is this new language, and we need to agree, or at least when we start like to work with someone else, just to be aware and to agree that if we decide something that is a social innovation, what is this? At least to make aware everyone on the stage that what we are talking about and what we are not talking about. That is like the minimum that we need to reach. So from everyone, yes, can come, I think, the definition, but at least we need to be all fine with what is the definition.
Right, that's clear. So alignment is definitely key there. I would divert back to the scaling process. So to the scaling theme that I believe is a major theme here, because as Professor Calderini mentioned, one of the major issues of social innovation is that it really never fully scaled up. So however we define it, however we define scaling, we might put it in terms of replication, we might put it in terms of actual practical diffusion. So a single social project that's been diffused to other cities, countries, populations, ideas, so, or even diffusion within the institutional realm. So a single innovation in a single city, let's say, that's reached policy-making processes. So however we define social innovation to really make it work, we need scalability there, because that's really the intrinsic value of social innovation. It needs to reach more people, it needs to reach as many people as possible in order to increase its magnitude. Why did it really never fully scale up, in your opinion? And how do you do that? So what are the main challenges in making social innovation scale, and where do you see it going in the future? Federico, we'll probably start from you there.
Yes, so I think that, there are different barriers for having a meaningful scaling process. And I think that the first barrier is related to the lack of long-term funds. So we have, funds that are on very short period. And we know that if we would like, to scale up something, to produce a systemic shift, we need to invest at least for 5 years. Ashoka invest through stipends in our fellow for 3 years. So 3 years, it's really the minimum requirement for supporting an organization in the scaling up process. So I think it's important to know that if you would like to produce a big shift, you need to be patient. And we know that investors and donors are not so patient. And if you, are more on profit sector, investors are looking for profits. So sometimes this could produce a sort of mission drift of the organization. So it's important, to really have a good balance. And we know that also the philanthropic donors, the social investors, they give you grants for 2 years, 3 years, and after that, they move to another grantee. So I think that a key part is related to changing the approach and try to provide long-term funding for this organization. And another barrier from my perspective is what we can call the failure culture. So when you are working with social innovation, sometimes the innovation could fail. So we should know that it's not only about succeed, but it's also about failing. So I think it's important that donors and investors could really embrace this view about long-term approach in funding, but also trying to understand that failure is part of the social innovation, as social innovation is intimately linked to a learning process. So when we are prototyping some solution, we are doing this also for learning and trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. So it's important to give to the donors the sense that sometimes it happens that an social innovation initiative fails, and this is not a failure, but it is part of our learning process.
Here. And I have a curiosity there because you really triggered my attention here. How do you define failure in social innovation? So when does social innovation fail? Because it's, of course, a little bit different from normal innovations. We know that 9 startups out of 10 fail within the first year, but they normally do fail because they didn't reach adequate scale, and they can't break even, and they don't collect any more funding, and they're not attractive to investors anymore. When does that process happen with social innovation? When can we say it's failed?
I think that we should really, as I mean, I said in the previous round, we should use different lens when we are looking to social innovation initiative. And I think that a social innovation initiative fails when it will not able really to engage the main stakeholders. So failure is, it's not more on, attracting capital, but it's more on the ability they have to engage the stakeholders. Social innovation is about working together. Social innovation is about, putting on the same table a private donor, a corporation, public authority, citizen. So it's really a different approach in which we are trying to work together, defining a shared vision of what we would like to achieve together. And when we are not able to generate this togetherness, this is the failure of social innovation. Or, if we consider a traditional failure, as I told you before, it's not a failure, but it's part of the learning process of social innovation.
Clear. Thanks very much. So the failure is still tied to its very intrinsic social value. Everything else is just part of the process. Elisa and Chiara, I would ask you the same questions. Scaling, how do we make it happen? What are the challenges? What can we readjust in the future to finally reach scale in social innovation?
Okay, thank you. So I can answer the question, and I think I would like to focus mainly on two concepts. So I think that the scalability of social innovation and more in general of non-profit organization, as Federico said, is very different compared to the scalability of maybe startups or for-profit organization. So I believe the main challenges that concern the scalability of social innovation are basically two. So on the one hand, there's more an economic sustainability dimension, and on the other hand, we have more a territorial dimension. So I start first with the economic dimension. So basically, the project that we work on are often financed through grants, which can be basically private or public at local, national, or European level. And I think that grants are really an excellent financial vehicle for starting a social innovation project. But the problem that is, it makes it difficult, the scalability of this project in other territories. So especially private grants and local public grants are very linked to the development of a single project in a very defined territory. So for this reason, I really believe that the first challenge of social innovation is to explore new forms of financing that are more long-term than the call for grants, in order to extend the time limit of the project, and in order to allow us to have enough time and also enough resources to explore new places in which to scale this project. And for the second point, after all the economic dimension, I would like to focus more on the territorial dimension of the project. So I think that when we start a social innovation project, we do it really by shaping and by personalizing it on the needs and on the characteristic of the reference area. And this makes it a bit difficult to scale a project for two main reasons. So first of all, the operation cannot just be replied in another area, but they really need to be adapted to the needs and to the peculiarity, I would say, of that area. In fact, no social innovation project can be just replied in a different territory while maintaining the same characteristic. And I think this is really a complex job because it needs lots of time and lots of economic resources to carry out analysis of the territory in which the project is to be scaled. And secondly, I think that activating, as I said before, activating a social innovation project in a new territory requires lots of support from the public administration and more in general from the government of that territory. So is very necessary to find a PA that is very welcoming, but also is inclined to the development of social impact project, because otherwise, of course, it will be very difficult for them to be developed. So yeah, I think that's all. So to conclude, I really believe that the scalability of social impact project is truly a huge opportunity for the territory. But for it to be possible, we need, on the one hand, very long-term fundings, and on the other hand, to improve territories that are inclusive and capable of welcoming such proposal.
Thank you very much, Chiara. I think it's very interesting what you said to provide a synthesis there. We need, on the one hand, something that is really building its momentum, and it's been doing it for the past couple of years. That's impact investing that could really represent a synthesis there, because through impact finance, we've actually witnessed a construction of a lot of new, innovative and sustainable means and tools of impact investing that could actually support social innovation initiatives. We've got a lot of them. We got the social impact bonds, we got the sustainability linked bonds, we got bonds and grant making and impact loans as well, that could really provide a synthesis there between the need for funding on the side of social innovators and the need for safety and sort of safety nets on the side of investors. So these tools could really represent the synthesis there. On the other side, we've got what does the public administration do? What can it really do to support these initiatives that, as you said, cannot be replicated entirely from one place to the other, but need to be adapted? And a solution there could be represented by public-private partnerships that, again, are really taking the lead. I've been taking the lead for the past couple of years, not so much in Italy, I must admit, but have really represented a way forward for social innovation and social entrepreneurs to integrate with the nets of public administration and have that kind of support to really scale within territories. So again, those are steps that we are taking there, but we're still lagging behind, unfortunately, as a country, because in Europe in general, we got a lot of positive initiatives there that we could really look to move ahead. But we're working on that. We're hopefully getting there. So I would have one last question and then one bonus question if we got time. So the last question for you would be, who's taking the lead? Who needs to take the lead in social innovation? What are the problems with the leadership permeating social innovation? What are your thoughts there? I would again go back and start from Federico Mento.
Yeah, maybe I can say something about the previous round, and I think it's very important for really supporting social innovators, trying to be undogmatic in designing the financial instruments. So sometimes we are very dogmatic and we produce a sort of silos in which a sort of different basket in which we put the financial resources, and these baskets are, I mean, without connection. And I think that if we would really support social innovation, long-term funding, and so on, what we have said before, we need also to try to link together these different channels of finance and having a common basket and use the different channels compared to the cycle life of the organization, the specific needs, and maybe we have also we should also, I mean, to be incremental. So from a very easy money granting approach to a more sophisticated impact investing approach. So having flexibility instead of working, I mean, in silos. And about, I mean, the question, the specific question, I think is important to have new leaders. And when I said that I mean, social innovation experience fail when it will not able to engage the stakeholders, I think that we need, really desperately need, new leaders that are able, I mean, to create co-leadership processes and be very open-minded when they are working with other organizations. Leaders that are not jealous of the know-how of the organization, but they would really share tools and experience, relation. And I think that this is, I mean, a crucial part. If we really find the right leaders working on this shared leadership approach, trying really to be very open and to share the experience of the organization, I think that we will, I mean, succeed and really having the possibility, the opportunity to scale up the organization. If we reproduce the old approach of leadership, of vertical leadership, it's very hard to engage other organizations to build an ecosystem or a platform. And so for this reason, we should really invest in new leadership and try really to identify those leaders that have these skills and they are able really to change the organization and engage with partners and be visionary, but at the same time to let it go to the other organization and give floor to the others instead, I mean, of having a solitary approach.
That's clear. Thank you very much, Federico. So as with the heart of social innovation, the key there is not replicating old approaches, old versions of what we already have, but imagining and reimagining new versions of them. Elisa and Chiara, I will pass the word to you.
Okay, thank you. So from my side, what I want to say is about like the future leadership is about, of course, like a leadership that has like a long-term vision and a vision like related to the impact that we can generate. So of course, like to reply to the need of today, to try to solve them, but with the direction of the defined impact that we want to reach. Otherwise, the risk is that otherwise we are not going to define the orientation, but we're just trying to solve something, but we don't know the possible result of what we are going to make. So on one side, this kind of visionary and systemic and impactful view of the leader. Then this leader, I think, is also like to need to have something like related to the fact of a leadership that is a multidisciplinary leadership. Otherwise, we have only one point of view. For example, in several projects, we find like that we have like a lot of teams with maybe just one, like more really vertical competencies, maybe more specific about education or about some specific related to the social aspect and so on. But if we don't have about like even technology, even management, even business and so on, we are like losing something. So we risk that the leadership is not so strong, but is only like related to some part of the project. So I think a multidisciplinary leadership can help like to have even a wider view on the problems, but also about the future that we want to generate. And last, I was thinking about like a leadership that need to be, of course, shared, but not shared only in terms of gains, so sharing something that I produce that I can give to the others and so on, but also about like shared responsibility, because otherwise it's kind of like, okay, I share what I can give, but also I need to share the responsibility. Maybe sometimes it's not comfortable, but instead I think is really, really important, because if we want to have a common leadership, we need to understand that everyone is responsible for what we are reaching or not. So we have to be like in the first line of making things. So to have a leadership that is with a vision, that is multidisciplinary, and that is also like with a shared responsibility. I think these three elements are crucial to make a new leadership that we need.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lisa. So the keywords there are multidisciplinarity and taking responsibility. So I think we've got to almost the end of our panel. I would like to ask a very quick bonus question, if I may. Again, if the public has got any questions there, feel free to pop them in the chat before we shut the session down. My very, very last bonus question is for each one of you, and will be really, if you had a magic wand, what social innovation would you like to see implemented in the, say, medium long term? What will be the actual social innovation that you think we really, really need to have in our planet, in our society, and it's still not there? It's probably not the easiest to implement, but you can do it. Which would it be? Federico, I would take it from you there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I would like to see if I have this magic power is what we call each, that is basically everyone is a change maker. So I think that this is the most powerful result in terms of social innovation, if everyone is empowered and everyone perceive himself or herself as really a change maker. And I think this is the most powerful achievement we can reach. And this is basically the long-term vision of our organization.
Great. Thank you very much, Federico. That's very, very close to mine as well. Chiara.
Yeah, so I truly agree with Federico. And if there's something else that I could imagine in my head, is more like about to improve a really good partnership way to collaborate between different people, just to build a social innovation that doesn't start from the vertical size, but start from just the people and the countries. So basically just a system when people have the ability to ask for new things, new approach that they need, and we just work with them and not just for them.
Thank you very much. Elisa, you got the last word there.
Okay, so of course I think like I can agree with both of them. So what I want just to say is that like there could be like a social innovation where of course everyone can participate, but if I can even add something else, which have like also all the tools to do it in a participatory way. So of course, being the change maker, of course, being on the floor, of course, have the access to all the resources that can make his or her own intervention really an active one, a participatory one, to reshape again what we can do in these social innovation solutions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Elisa. Thank you very much to all of you. I would wrap up this session, and I didn't see any questions in the chat. If any of our attendees, because I know most of you are in the social innovation sector, social enterprise sector, so you deal with social impact-oriented themes on a daily basis. If any of you want to bring forward their point of view or their expertise or your experiences, please feel free to do so. Again, if you have any questions, if you want, you can turn on your camera, your